Hello. Hello. Am I in the frame? Hey guys, so yesterday was World Refugee Day. On my Instagram, I asked if the people who follow me felt like they were very aware of what was going on or if they wish they knew more. And the majority of the people spoke, and they said that they wish they knew more. And so I asked, if I posted a video, would you want to watch it? And again, the majority of people said that they totally would and they wanted to learn more. And so that is what I'm attempting to do right now. And as you can already tell, I'm not very good at this. This is me attempting to be brave and talk about something I'm passionate about. And that is the World Refugee Crisis. So basically, to start off with, refugee is somebody who has been displaced because of war, persecution, violence, because of natural disasters sometimes. And right now there's over 65 million refugees in the world. And that is a mind-blowing number. Whenever I first was kind of exposed to refugees and the refugee crisis, I was exposed to what was going on in Syria through media, and my heart was just broken for those people. And I never imagined, as I started researching and kind of finding more out about it, I didn't know anything that was going on. I had seen a glimpse of the pain that they've been going through for years and years now. Syria has been in a war for 7 years, I believe, maybe longer than that now, and they have the largest number of displaced people as of right now in the world. And I think the number is at 12 million in 2016, and that's an insane number of people for them to not have homes, for their homes to be taken away from them, and in most cases very violently. If you look up pictures or videos or anything of Syria, most of what you're going to see is just rubble and complete cities that are just dust on the ground. And in a lot of those pictures, you'll see the people leaving, and you can see in their faces just the complete horror of what they've been through. And that is a lot of the reality for a lot of refugees. Right now, I think that this, like, statistically speaking, 1 person every 2 seconds is displaced from their home. That's insane. That's crazy. And that's just the reality of what's going on in our world today. So obviously, it goes without saying that refugees face a horrific amount of issues in becoming refugees, basically. So obviously, starting with the fact that they're removed from their homes, and oftentimes in a horribly violent way. Sometimes I'm sure they leave and their homes are still intact, but a good majority of the times they leave and their homes aren't even there. And so starting with the fact that they are forced to leave, and then a lot of times just a single refugee as an individual, as they leave and as they're forced to flee and they're seeking shelter somewhere else, they lose family, they lose friends, they lose almost, like, the majority of the time a refugee doesn't make it from one point to the next point without losing somebody along the way. A lot of people will try to basically get across the Mediterranean Sea from one place to the next place. And it's not like they're getting on boats that are able to do that. They're just getting on whatever they can, rafts, small boats, and attempting to make it across the sea in order to find shelter. I feel like that should pretty much tell you how desperate they are. If somebody is willing to put their children, put their families, put themselves on a tiny boat in the middle of the ocean in an attempt to find safety, what they're leaving behind is a lot scarier than that. And so trying to find a place of refuge, just a place of safety for the time being, is one of the largest trials that a lot of refugees face. So whenever they get there, it's not like their trials and their struggle ends. Obviously, the emotional trauma and physical trauma that they've already endured, that doesn't end there. And neither do the problems they face. A lot of times not a lot of times, actually a refugee child, a school-age child, is 5 times less likely to be able to get an education if they're a refugee versus if they're not. So there are millions and millions and millions of kids who don't even have access to education because back to the very beginning, they've been forced to leave their home because somebody blew it up. So the majority of kids who do get to go to school as a refugee are primary age kids, so like elementary school. The older the kid, the less likely they are to go to school. Primary school is the largest number of kids getting an education, and then secondary school, the number gets significantly lower, and then by the time they reach university, 1% of refugees go to college. And so not only have they had the life they had, they don't have the opportunity to even get an education. School-age kids makes up actually, I believe, over half of the refugee population. And then the other half of that obviously is men and women, and their problems don't end either. Even if they do have an education, trying to find jobs and homes and things like that in the places that they've resettled in is extremely difficult. A lot of times they've gone from a place, their home country, and they speak like their language, their first language, and then go to another place and they don't speak that language. And so even communication is a difficult thing. And if you can't communicate, you can't get a job. If you can't communicate, you can't find community. And so it's just like this never-ending battle of trying to take the worst thing in the world and get your feet back on the ground and make a life. And they face that battle every single day. One of the questions you might be asking is, what are we doing about it? I know that was a question that I wanted an answer to. I wanted to know, like, as a country, what are we doing for these people whose countries are being destroyed? So I started doing a little bit of research, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about that from the U.S. perspective. That's where I'm from. So the U.S. makes an effort to seek out the most vulnerable. A lot of times, most of the time, that is women and children, elderly, and then people who have been victims of trauma and violence, and it's affected them medically. So basically, a refugee gets recommended to the U.S. I should say that there's a lot of other countries that bring in refugees, and so it's refugees don't get to pick where they go, they get recommended, and if they get recommended, then there's a process, and if they get accepted, they get brought into those countries. And so the process for the U.S. is that they get recommended, and then they go through a vetting process, and that vetting process is the reason it takes a year to 2 years for them to get in. A lot of people were talking about the concern for safety, for the U.S. citizens' safety by bringing refugees in, and let me just make it really clear. I know that things happen, but and you know, somebody could probably get through the process and something could go wrong, but in most case scenarios, a refugee is not the person who's going to cause the issue if they go through the legal process correctly, and those are the people that I'm talking about right now. So basically, they get recommended, they go through the vetting process, and the vetting process for a refugee to get into the USA is extensive. It starts with screening from 8 federal agencies, including Department of Homeland Security, State Department, FBI, etc. There's 5 other ones. I don't know them. Then there's 6 security database checks. That's a lot of S's, and I have a list sometimes, and so slow down on that one. Then they go through a medical screening, and then they do an interview with 3 different officers from Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security. And then once they get through that entire process, then if they're accepted, then they're brought into the U.S. and the relocation process starts then. The U.S. has really cracked down on how many refugees they'll allow in, and right now the max number is 45,000, and we're actually on track to only reach about half of that. So I'm praying that our government will be diligent and that they'll be merciful, and yeah, that's hard. My next question was, what can I do? And I'll be really honest and say that this is where I just kind of felt useless in a way. 65 million is a massive number. it's daunting and it's sickening, and one person compared to 65 million isn't a lot. And I really just would look at that number and look at the pictures and look at everything that was going on and just feel like I was useless. And I got to the point where I was like, God, why is that their reality and this is my reality? And I realized that as I was asking these questions and as I was getting frustrated, everything I was getting frustrated about was, why can't I? What about, I can't, or that kind of thing. And I noticed that I was in all of my frustration. And so I had to get to the point where I stopped making it about me. The truth is that any one person can make a difference, no matter how big the issue, no matter how daunting the issue. If you're willing to make a change, you can make a change. But if you sit there and do nothing about it, nothing changes if nothing's done. Ignoring something doesn't make the issue go away. So we have to stop looking at it as if we are the sole solution. We have to stop looking at it as if we're the only one that's heartbroken by what's happening. We have to stop looking at it as if we're the only one that can bring hope, and realize that if we would see ourselves as one person who's bringing awareness or donating money, or just one person in a sea of a whole lot of other people who see what's going on and they want to make a difference too, that as a group, collectively, we can actually change the narrative for these people. So the next thing is kind of what I'm trying to do, and that is be aware and then make other people aware. Awareness is a huge thing. If people don't know about it, they can't do anything about it. So now that you know about the refugee crisis, I would recommend continuing to look into what's going on. Do research, and if you like Netflix, get on Netflix, watch documentary. Just do whatever you can to understand the lives that these people are living. Make your reality about more than just you, and be somebody who wants to change somebody else's reality for the better. Another thing you can do is donate. Like I said just a few seconds or minutes ago, I don't know how long ago, see yourself as just one person in a group of many, many people who are trying to make a difference for these people. I'd encourage you to research people and places who have made it their life's mission to go and help these people. Find somewhere that your heart connects with what they're doing in those places. If you love art, there's a team from a church in Los Angeles last year called Mosaic. They went and they did, it was an arts camp in a refugee camp, and it's not just donating food and clothes and all that's amazing, but you can find something that you are passionate about, that you love, and you can give that opportunity to somebody else. Another nonprofit that's doing amazing work is called Love Does. There's a man named Bob Goff who's made it his life mission to love the world, and he's an amazing man, and he's created an amazing organization of amazing people, and everybody in that nonprofit, their life goal is to just change the world for the better and to show love to everybody they come in contact with. They're doing things in Somalia, in Iraq, in Afghanistan. They actually, I think, just built a school in Afghanistan. They'd be an amazing, amazing place to go and donate money to. There's another place called Preemptive Love. It's another nonprofit, and they're in Iraq and in some other places, and they're on the front lines of the war and what's going on, and they're letting the U.S. know, they're letting just everybody know what's going on, and they're right there whenever war strikes, whenever bad things happen, they're there, and they're doing what they can to fix it. And so they're another amazing nonprofit you could donate to. I talked about human trafficking earlier and the way it's interwoven with the refugee crisis. I donate every month to A21, which is an organization that's fighting to end modern day slavery. And so if that's something you're passionate about, and you're passionate about this refugee crisis, then I'd recommend donating to them. If we can end modern day slavery, then we can end an avenue of horror that these refugees have to deal with. So again, I'd encourage you to just do some research. If none of those sound like something you want to donate to, get online and like research places that are doing something you're passionate about and that you connect to, and invest in people. Invest in humans that are just like you, that are living in something that you can never imagine. And the thing about like donating, I think that sometimes we get in our head that if we can't donate a massive amount of money, my donation isn't worth donating. And that's just totally a lie. You could donate 50 cents and you're helping. It might not seem like it, but every little bit counts because it adds up. Like I said, again, you're one person in a collective group of individuals who want to bring change. So invest in that group and invest in the people that you're helping. If you're a Christian, another thing you can do is pray. There's power in prayer, and that ain't no lie. So get on your knees for these people, and you know what, like research and donate and do whatever you have the means to do. Do whatever you feel led and passionate about, led to do, and anything you feel passionate about. And then hit your knees and pray for these people, and pray that you know, the right people would be put in their paths, and the refuge they need would be given, and that, you know, governments and, you know, countries, that they would come and they would do all that they can to help these people, that we would have mercy, and that we would show grace, and that we would show love as individuals in the world, that we would be people who are a refuge. Pray for that. Pray for the reality of these people to just be turned upside down, and for them to have gone through horror, but pray that what's on the other side for them is not mediocre. It's not just getting by, but it's actually a life that is beautiful, and that they could literally build it back up from the ground up. So pray for these people. If you're not into praying, send them good thoughts. I don't know. And my very last thing, end of the video, last tip, last recommendation, last plead with you is to not give up. Don't hear all the statistics. Don't hear the horror of what's happening. Don't see the news and the pictures and the numbers and just be overwhelmed with the bad in the world. Don't be overwhelmed with the largeness of the problem, but be persistent in being willing to bring change. Be somebody who doesn't give up on somebody else. And in that, I would say a lot of times you can be one person in the U.S. just minding their own business, going to Starbucks and going to school, and you can really just desensitize yourself from what's going on in the rest of the world. And I don't think that we should just spend our days sad and weary about all the bad things happening in the world, but I think that we could look at the things that we have and look at where we're at and believe that we have what we have, and we're in the place that we're in for a reason, and that maybe that reason is to bring change to somebody who doesn't have what we have. Maybe that reason is to bring change to somebody whose reality is dark, and maybe our purpose in life is to use the resources and the freedom that we have to bring awareness to what they don't have, and change their reality for the better. The refugee crisis is real and it's massive, but I'm not going to for a second believe that it's impossible, that I'm not going to believe that change is impossible. I'm not going to believe that there's not hope for those people, and I want my life to be about trying to make a difference for another human, and whether that's a refugee or a victim of human trafficking or anyone, I want my life to be about other people, and so that's what I'm going to do, and that's what you should do too. That's just a little bit about the refugee crisis and everything going on, and some things you can do, and a little bit of preaching at the end maybe. Got carried away, but I hope I answered some questions, and I know I left out so much, so if you have more questions, feel free to ask me, feel free to message me. This is something I'm passionate about, so yeah, thank you for watching it if you made it to the end of this, and for sticking with my awkwardness. I'm sweating now, and the sun's going down and I'm gonna go get some coffee. Bye.
There are no